Radio Krishna Centrale presents the Srimad Bhagavatam by Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, with original Sanskrit verse, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder-Acarya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, a Radio Krishna Centrale program by Revati Rupeswari Devi Dasi and the Yadunandana dasi. Copyright BBTI, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust International, all rights reserved. For any information, please visit radiokrishna.com. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 23.
Sattvang rajasthama iti prakriteir gunastair yukta para purusha eka ihasya dhatti sthityadaye harivirinchi hariti sangya shreyangsi tatra karau sattvatanor nrinang syuhu.
Translation. The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance. And just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction, he accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness. Purport. That Lord Shri Krishna, by his plenary parts, should be rendered devotional service, as explained above, is confirmed by this statement. And all his plenary parts are Vishnu Tattva, or the Lordship of Godhead. From Shri Krishna, the next manifestation is Baladeva. From Baladev is Shankarshan. From Shankarshan is Narayan. From Narayan, there is the second Shankarshan, and then from this Shankarshan, the Vishnu Purusha avatars. The Vishnu, or the deity of the quality of goodness in the material world, is the Purusha avatar, known as Kshirodakshai Vishnu, or Paramatma. Brahma is the deity of Rajas, passion, and Shiva of ignorance. They are the three departmental heads of the three qualities of this material world. Creation is made possible by the goodness of Vishnu, and when it requires to be destroyed, Lord Shiva does it by the Tandava Nritya. The materialists and the foolish human beings worship Brahma and Shiva respectively. But the pure transcendentalists worship the form of goodness Vishnu in his various forms. Vishnu is manifested by his millions and billions of integrated forms and separated forms. The integrated forms are called Godhead, and the separated forms are called the living entities or the jivas. Both the jivas and Godhead have their original spiritual forms. Jivas are sometimes subjected to the control of material energy, but the Vishnu forms are always controllers of this energy. When Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, appears in the material world, he comes to deliver the conditioned living beings who are under the material energy. Such living beings appear in the material world with intentions of being lords, and thus they become entrapped by the three modes of nature. As such, the living entities have to change their material coverings for undergoing different terms of imprisonment. The prison house of the material world is created by Brahma under instruction of the personality of Godhead, and at the conclusion of a kalpa, the whole thing is destroyed by Shiva. But as far as maintenance of the prison house is concerned, it is done by Vishnu as much as the state prison house is maintained by the state. Anyone, therefore, who wishes to get out of this prison house of material existence, which is full of miseries like repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, must please Lord Vishnu for such liberation. Lord Vishnu is worshipped by devotional service only, and if anyone has to continue prison life in the material world, he may ask for relative facilities for temporary relief from the different demigods like Shiva, Brahma, Indra, and Varuna. No demigod, however, can release the imprisoned living being from the conditioned life of the material existence. This can be done only by Vishnu. Therefore, the ultimate benefit may be derived from Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 24.
Paritvad darunodhumas tasmad agnis trayimaya tamasas rajas tasmad satvang yad brahma darshanam.
Translation. Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood. And fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas. But goodness, sattva, is best because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth. Purport. As explained above, one can get release from the conditioned life of material existence by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. It is further comprehended herein that one has to rise to the platform of the mode of goodness, sattva, so that one can be eligible for the devotional service of the Lord. But if there are impediments on the progressive path, anyone, even from the platform of tamas, can gradually rise to the sattva platform by the expert direction of the spiritual master. Sincere candidates must therefore approach an expert spiritual master for such a progressive march, and the bona fide expert spiritual master is competent to direct a disciple from any stage of life, tamas, rajas, or sattva. It is a mistake, therefore, to consider that worship of any quality or any form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally beneficial. Except Vishnu, all separated forms are manifested under the conditions of material energy, and therefore the forms of material energy cannot help anyone to rise to the platform of sattva, which alone can liberate a person from material bondage. The uncivilized state of life, or the life of the lower animals, is controlled by the mode of tamas. The civilized life of men, with a passion for various types of material benefits, is the stage of rajas. The rajas stage of life gives a slight clue to the realization of the absolute truth in the forms of fine sentiments in philosophy, art, and culture, with moral and ethical principles. But the mode of sattva is a still higher stage of material quality, which actually helps one in realizing the absolute truth. In other words, there is a qualitative difference between the different kinds of worshipping methods, as well as the respective results derived from the predominating deities, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Hara. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 25.
Bhejire munayodhagre bhagavantam adhokshajam satvang vishuddhang kshimaya kalpante ye nutaniha.
Translation. Previously, all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. Purport. The purpose of performing religion is neither to profit by material gain nor to get the simple knowledge of discerning matter from spirit. The ultimate aim of religious performances is to release oneself from material bondage and regain the life of freedom in the transcendental world, where the personality of Godhead is the Supreme Person. Laws of religion, therefore, are directly enacted by the personality of Godhead, and except for the Mahajans, or the authorized agents of the Lord, no one knows the purpose of religion. There are 12 particular agents of the Lord who know the purpose of religion, and all of them render transcendental service unto him. Persons who desire their own good may follow these Mahajans and thus attain the supreme benefit. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 26.
Mumukshavo ghora rupan hitva bhutapatinata narayana kala shanta bhajanti hyanusuyavaha.
Translation. Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, who is the original person of the Vishnu categories, expands himself in two different categories, namely integrated plenary portions and separated parts and parcels. The separated parts and parcels are the servitors, and the integrated plenary portions of Vishnu Tattvas are the worshipful objects of service. All demigods who are empowered by the Supreme Lord are also separated parts and parcels. They do not belong to the categories of Vishnu Tattva. The Vishnu Tattvas are living beings equally as powerful as the original form of the personality of Godhead, and they display different categories of power in consideration of different times and circumstances. The separated parts and parcels are powerful by limitation. They do not have unlimited power like the Vishnu Tattvas. Therefore, one should never classify the Vishnu Tattvas or the plenary portions of Narayan, the personality of Godhead, in the same categories with the parts and parcels. If anyone does so, he becomes at once an offender by the name Pasandi. In the age of Kali, many foolish persons commit such unlawful offenses and equalize the two categories. The separated parts and parcels have different positions in the estimation of material powers, and some of them are like Kala Bhairava, Shmashana Bhairava, Shani, Mahakali, and Chandika. These demigods are worshipped mostly by those who are in the lowest categories of the mode of darkness of ignorance. Other demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Surya, Ganesh, and many similar deities are worshipped by men in the mode of passion, urged on by the desire of material enjoyment. But those who are actually situated in the mode of goodness, Sattvaguna, of material nature, worship only Vishnu Tattvas. Vishnu Tattvas are represented by various names and forms, such as Narayana, Damodar, Vamana, Govinda, and Adoksaja. The qualified Brahmanas worship the Vishnu Tattvas represented by the Shalagram Shila, and some of the higher castes, like the Kshatriya and Vaishyas, also generally worship the Vishnu Tattvas. Highly qualified Brahmanas, situated in the mode of goodness, have no grudges against the mode of worship of others. They have all respect for other demigods, even though they may look ghastly, like Kala Bhairava or Mahakali. They know very well that those horrible features of the Supreme Lord are different servitors of the Lord under different conditions. Yet they reject the worship of both horrible and attractive features of the demigods, and they concentrate only on the forms of Vishnu because they are serious about liberation from the material conditions. The demigods, even to the stage of Brahma, the supreme of all the demigods, cannot offer liberation to anyone. Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of penance to become eternal in life, but his worshipful deity, Brahma, could not satisfy him with such blessings. Therefore, Vishnu and no one else is called Muktipada, or the personality of Godhead who can bestow upon us mukti, liberation. The demigods, being like other living entities in the material world, are all liquidated at the time of the annihilation of the material structure. They are themselves unable to get liberation, and what to speak of giving liberation to their devotees? The demigods can award the worshippers some temporary benefit only, and not the ultimate one. It is for this reason only that candidates for liberation deliberately reject the worship of the demigods, although they have no disrespect for any one of them. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 27.
Rajastama prakritaya samashira bhajanti vai pitribhuta pradeshadin shri aishvarya prajepsavaha.
Translation. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Purport. There is no need to worship demigods of whatsoever category if one is serious about going back to Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that those who are mad after material enjoyment approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of the bare necessities of life and not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind oneself more and more to the miseries of material existence. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man because he has no information of the benefit derived from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit in this life as well as in life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, and more children worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. For material enjoyment, there is no need to approach the demigods. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. One should be careful to execute occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that will lead one gradually on the progressive march back to Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna, when he was personally present at Vrajadama, stopped the worship of the demigod Indra and advised the residents of Vraja to worship by their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. This sort of religious activity has been condemned in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam as Kaitava Dharma. There is only one religion in the world to be followed by one and all, and that is the Bhagavad Dharma, or the religion which teaches one to worship the personality of Godhead and no one else. Canto 1, Chapter 2, verses 28 and 29.
Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakaha, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Parakriyaha, Vasudeva Parang Jnanam, Vasudeva Parang Tapaha, Vasudeva Parodharamo, Vasudeva Paragatihi.
Translation. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please Him. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. Religion, Dharma, is rendering love service unto Him. He is the supreme goal of life. Purport. That Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship is confirmed in these two shlokas. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving our lost love in service unto Him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in His own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know Him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord through His incarnation in the body of Srila Vyasadeva, just to remind the fallen souls conditioned by material nature of Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. No demigod can award freedom from material bondage. That is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. Impersonalists who have no information of the personality of Godhead minimize the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord and put him on equal footing with all other living beings. And for this act, such impersonalists get freedom from material bondage only with great difficulty. They can surrender unto him only after many, many births in the culture of transcendental knowledge. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. That is true, but all such sacrifices are also meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is Yagya, sacrifice, and in the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of Yagya, or Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. This is the case also with the yoga systems. Yoga means to get in touch with the Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features such as asana, dhyana, pranayama, and meditation, and all of them are meant for concentrating upon the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. Paramatma realization is but partial realization of Vasudeva, and if one is successful in that attempt, one realizes Vasudeva in full. But by ill luck, most yogis are stranded by the powers of mysticism achieved through the bodily process. Ill-fated yogis are given a chance in the next birth by being placed in the families of good learned brahmanas or in the families of rich merchants in order to execute the unfinished task of Vasudeva realization. If such fortunate brahmanas and sons of rich men properly utilize the chance, they can easily realize Vasudeva by good association with saintly persons. Unfortunately, such preferred persons are captivated again by material wealth and honor, and thus they practically forget the aim of life. This is also so for the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 items in culturing knowledge. By such culture of knowledge, one becomes gradually prideless, devoid of vanity, non-violent, forbearing, simple, devoted to great spiritual master, and self-controlled. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to earth and home and becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age, and disease. And all culture of knowledge culminates in devotional service to the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim in culturing all different branches of knowledge. Culture of knowledge leading one to the transcendental plane of meeting Vasudeva is real knowledge. Physical knowledge in its various branches is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as ajnana, or the opposite of real knowledge. The ultimate aim of physical knowledge is to satisfy the senses, which means prolongation of the term of material existence, and thereby continuance of the threefold miseries. So prolonging the miserable life of material existence is nescience. But the same physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps one to end the miserable life of physical existence and to begin the life of spiritual existence on the plane of Vasudeva. The same applies to all kinds of austerities. Tapasya means voluntarily acceptance of bodily pains to achieve some higher end of life. Ravana and Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of bodily torture to achieve the end of sense gratification. Sometimes modern politicians also undergo severe types of austerities to achieve some political end. This is not actually tapasya. One should accept voluntary bodily inconvenience for the sake of knowing Vasudeva, because that is the way of real austerities. Otherwise, all forms of austerities are classified as modes of passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance cannot end the miseries of life. Only the mode of goodness can mitigate the threefold miseries of life. Vasudeva and Devaki, the so-called father and mother of Lord Krishna, underwent penances to get Vasudeva as their son. Lord Shri Krishna is the father of all living beings. Therefore, he is the original living being for all other living beings. He is the original eternal enjoyer amongst all other enjoyers. Therefore, no one can be his begetting father, as the ignorant may think. Lord Shri Krishna agreed to become the son of Vasudeva and Devaki upon being pleased with their severe austerities. Therefore, if any austerities have to be done, they must be done to achieve the end of knowledge, Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the original personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. As explained before, the original personality of Godhead expands himself by innumerable forms. Such expansion of forms is made possible by his various energies. His energies are also multifarious, and his internal energies are superior and external energies inferior in quality. They are explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the para and the apara prakritis. So his expansions of various forms which take place via the internal energies are superior forms, whereas the expansions which take place via the external energies are inferior forms. The living entities are also his expansions. The living entities who are expanded by his internal potency are eternally liberated persons, whereas those who are expanded in terms of the material energies are eternally conditioned souls. Therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerities, sacrifice, and activities should be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all being controlled by the external energy of the Lord, and just to change the quality of the influence, we must endeavor to cultivate spiritual energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that those who are Mahatmas, or those whose minds have been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, are under influence of the internal potency, and the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without deviation. That should be the aim of life, and that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. No one should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation about transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Nor should one worship different demigods who work as different hands of the Lord for creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. There are innumerable powerful demigods who look over the external management of the material world. They are all different assisting hands of the Lord Vasudeva. Even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are included in the list of demigods, but Lord Vishnu or Vasudeva is always transcendentally situated. Even though he accepts the quality of goodness of the material world, he is still transcendental to all the material modes. The following example will clear that matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are the prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound by the laws of the king. But even though the king sometimes comes in the prison, he is not bound by the laws of the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 30.
Saivedang sasarjagre Bhagavan Atmarama Sadasadarupaya chasav Gunamaya guno vibhuhu.
Translation. In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Purport. The position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 31.
Taya vilasiteshveshu guneshu gunavaniva anta pravishta abhati vijnanena vijrimbhitaha.
Translation. After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. Purport. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and the conditioned living entities who are unfit for the spiritual kingdom are strewn within the material world to enjoy matter to the fullest extent. As Paramatma and eternal friend of the living entities, the Lord, by one of his plenary portions, accompanies the living entities to guide them in their material enjoyment and to become witness to all activities. While the living entities enjoy the material conditions, the Lord maintains his transcendental position without being affected by the material atmosphere. In the Vedic literatures, the Shruti, it is said that there are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. The witness is the Lord, and the fruit eater is the living entity. The fruit eater, living entity, has forgotten his real identity and is overwhelmed in the fruitive activities of the material conditions. But the Lord, the Paramatma, is always full in transcendental knowledge. That is the difference between the super soul and the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, the living entity, is controlled by the laws of nature, while the Paramatma, or the super soul, is the controller of the material energy. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 32.
Yatha hyavahito vahnir darushvika svayonishu naneva bhati vishvatma bhuteshu cha tatha puman.
Translation. The Lord, as Supersoul, pervades all things. Just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the Absolute One without a second. Purport. Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc. are all different effects of the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are especially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. As fire is kindled from wood by another fire, the divine consciousness of a man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. His divine grace, the spiritual master, can kindle the spiritual fire from the wood-like living entity by imparting proper spiritual messages injected through the receptive ear. Therefore, one is required to approach the proper spiritual master with receptive ears only, and thus divine existence is gradually realized. The difference between animality and humanity lies in the process only. A human being can hear properly, whereas an animal cannot. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 33.
Asau gunamayair bhavair bhuta sukshmaindriyatmabhi svanirmiteshu nirvishto bhunkte bhuteshu tadgunan.
Translation. The Supersoul enters into the bodies of the created being who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind. Purport. There are 8,400,000 species of living beings, beginning from the highest intellectual being, Brahma, down to the insignificant ant, and all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of the subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. The Lord, as Paramatma, helps the living being to get material happiness, because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He proposes, and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are therefore one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The sufferings and enjoyments of the sons are indirectly the sufferings and enjoyments of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way affected directly by the sufferings and enjoyments of the sons. He is so kind that he constantly remains with the living beings as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living beings towards the real happiness. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 34.
Bhavayatisha sattvena lokan vailoka bhavanaha Leela-avatara nurato devatiriyang naradishu.
Translation. Thus, the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. Purport. There are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of nature. The Lord Vishnu incarnates himself in each and every one of them and in each and every type of living society. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create the desire to go back to Godhead. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstances, and society. Sometimes he incarnates himself or empowers a suitable living being to act for him, but in either case, the purpose is the same. The Lord wants the suffering living being to go back home, back to Godhead. The happiness which the living beings are hankering for is not to be found within any corner of the innumerable universes and the material planets. The eternal happiness which the living being wants is attainable in the kingdom of God. But the forgetful living beings, under the influence of the material modes, have no information of the kingdom of God. The Lord, therefore, comes to propagate the message of the kingdom of God, either personally, as an incarnation, or through his bona fide representative as the good Son of God. Such incarnations, or sons of God, are not making propaganda for going back to Godhead only within the human society. Their work is also going on in all types of societies, amongst the demigods and those other than human beings. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Verse 1.
Suta uvacha Jagrehe paurushang rupang Bhagavan mahadadibhi Sangbhutang shodashakalam adau loka sisrikshaya.
Translation. Suta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universe. Purport. The Bhagavad Gita states that the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, maintains these material universes by extending his plenary expansions. So, this Purusha form is the confirmation of the same principle. The original personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, who is famous as the son of King Vasudeva or King Nanda, is full with all opulences, all potencies, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Part of his opulences are manifested as impersonal Brahman, and part of his opulences are manifested as Paramatma. This Purusha feature of the same personality of Godhead Shri Krishna is the original Paramatma manifestation of the Lord. There are 3 Purusha features in the material creation, and this form, who is known as the Karanadakshayi Vishnu, is the first of the 3. The others are known as the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu and the Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, which we shall know one after another. The innumerable universes are generated from the skin holes of this Karanadakshayi Vishnu, and in each one of the universes, the Lord enters as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also mentioned that the material world is created at certain intervals and then again destroyed. This creation and destruction is done by the Supreme Will because of the conditioned souls, or the Nitya Baddha, living beings. The Nitya Baddha, or the eternally conditioned souls, have the sense of individuality or ahankara, which dictates them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. The Lord is the only enjoyer, and all others are enjoyed. The living beings are predominated enjoyers, but the eternally conditioned souls, forgetful of this conditional position, have strong aspirations to enjoy. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls in the material world, and side by side they are given the chance to understand their real constitutional position. Those fortunate living entities who catch the truth and surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva, after many births in the material world, join the eternally liberated souls and thus are allowed to enter into the kingdom of Godhead. After this, such a fortunate living entities need not come again within the occasional material creation. But those who cannot catch the constitutional truth are again merged into the Mahatattva at the time of the annihilation of the material creation. When the creation is again set up, this Mahatattva is again let loose. This Mahatattva contains all the ingredients of the material manifestations, including the conditioned souls. Primarily, this Mahatattva is divided into 16 parts, namely the 5 gross material elements and the 11 working instruments or senses. It is like the cloud in the clear sky. In the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in spiritual light. The Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky, and the part which is thus covered by the Mahatattva is called the material sky. This part of the spiritual sky, called the Mahatattva, is only an insignificant portion of the whole spiritual sky, and within this Mahatattva there are innumerable universes. All these universes are collectively produced by the Karanodakshayi Vishnu, called also the Mahavishnu, who simply throws his glance to impregnate the material sky. Canto 1, Chapter 3, Verse 2.
Yasyam pasishayanasya yoga nidrang vitanvataha nabhi haradam bujadasid brahma vishva shrijang patihi.
Translation. A part of the Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel leg of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from the lotus flower, atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest. Purport. The first Purusha is the Karanodakshayi Vishnu. From his skin holes, innumerable universes have sprung up. In each and every universe, the Purusha enters as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. He is lying within the half of the universe which is full with the water of his body. And from the navel of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu has sprung the stem of the lotus flower, the birthplace of Brahma, who is the father of all living beings and the master of all the demigod engineers engaged in the perfect design and working of the universal order. Within the stem of the lotus, there are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and the earthly planets are situated in the middle. Upwards, there are other, better planetary systems, and the topmost system is called Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Downwards from the earthly planetary system, there are 7 lower planetary systems inhabited by the Asuras and similar other materialistic living beings. From Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, there is expansion of the Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, who is the collective Paramatma of all living beings. He is called Hari, and from him all incarnations within the universe are expanded. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Purusha avatar is manifested in 3 features. First, the Karanodakshayi Vishnu, who creates aggregate material ingredients in the Mahatattva. Second, the Garbhodakshayi, who enters in each and every universe. And third, the Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, who is the Paramatma of every material object, organic or inorganic. One who knows these plenary features of the personality of Godhead knows Godhead properly, and thus the knower becomes freed from the material conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease, as it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In this shloka, the subject matter of Mahavishnu is summarized. The Mahavishnu lies down in some part of the spiritual sky by his own free will. Thus, he lies on the ocean of Karana, from where he glances over his material nature, and the Mahatattva is at once created. Thus, electrified by the power of the Lord, the material nature at once creates innumerable universes, just as in due course a tree decorates itself with innumerable grown fruits. The seed of the tree is sown by the cultivator, and the tree or creeper in due course becomes manifested with so many fruits. Nothing can take place without a cause. The Karana ocean is therefore called the causal ocean. Karana means causal. We should not foolishly accept the atheistic theory of creation. The description of the atheists is given in the Bhagavad Gita. The atheist does not believe in the Creator, but he cannot give a good theory to explain the creation. Material nature has no power to create without the power of the Purusha, just as a Prakriti or woman cannot produce a child without the connection of a Purusha or man. The Purusha impregnates and the Prakriti delivers. We should not expect milk from the fleshy bags on the neck of a goat, although they look like breastly nipples. Similarly, we should not expect any creative power from the material ingredients. We must believe in the power of the Purusha who impregnates Prakriti or nature. Because the Lord wished to lie down in meditation, the material energy created innumerable universes at once. In each of them the Lord lay down, and thus all the planets and the different paraphernalia were created at once by the will of the Lord. The Lord has unlimited potencies, and thus he can act as he likes by perfect planning, although personally he has nothing to do. No one is greater than or equal to him. That is the verdict of the Vedas. You have listened to the Srimad Bhagavatam by Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, with original Sanskrit verse, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder-Acarya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, a Radio Krishna Centrale program by Revati Rupeswari Devi Dasi and the Yadunandana Das. Copyright BBTI, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust International. All rights reserved. For any information, please visit radiokrishna.com.